Thank everybody for joining us in this afternoon's webinar entitled Maximizing the Efficiency of Your STARLIMS. My name is Kevin Miller with Astrix Technology Group, and I'm going to take you through the beginning of today's session and then turn it over to our guest speakers. Next slide, please. So before we go into the actual content, I want to just share with you briefly a little bit about Astrix Technology Group, tell you about who we are, what we do, why we think we have the right to be talking to you about these topics today, and then we'll get into it. So we won't kill you too much with this, but we'll want to at least give a sense of who we are as a company. So Astrix is predominantly a professional services company focused on lab informatics or scientific informatics, but we also do staffing. But that is also dedicated to the scientific community. The company was established in 1995 and today is privately held. It began as an IT division of a company called APBI, which was at the time a $300 million life science research organization. Today, Astrix operates from 8 offices around the country and globe, and we have about a little over 650 employees total. The headquarters are in Red Bank, New Jersey, and again, there's 2 divisions: a staffing division, which does private and public staffing for scientific and IT resources, and then professional services, which focuses on supporting life sciences organizations, predominantly with things like laboratory informatics systems, LIMS, ELN, etc. We typically work with Fortune 1000 life sciences companies, as well as government and research institutions. The mission of the company has and always will be to deliver scalable, sustainable solutions in IT and staffing for the scientific community. As we like to say, we're technologists who just so happen to be scientists, or we're scientists that just so happen to be technologists. We do next slide, please. In terms of the type of services the company offers, I just want to do a quick snapshot of those. There's an end-to-end services component to Astrix that spans the complete life cycle of scientific data systems. This includes everything from doing business process analysis, which is essentially trying to figure out, what are the right systems and processes that you need to implement in order to optimize the performance of your business as a whole. There's enterprise architecture, figuring out, should you be an on-premise, should you be in the cloud, or some hybrid. Then there's actually selecting the right services or selecting the right technology. That's one of our most popular services that we do. And then second to that would be the development and implementation of the actual systems themselves, like STARLIMS. There's validation, computer systems validation that we do as well. And then there's additional functions within laboratory system services and scientific and technical staffing services. So we can staff and not only support the systems that we implement, but we can also potentially staff them with individuals and professionals who are experts in those systems as well. At the end of the day, evaluate, implement, manage the systems to enhance the collection and processing of scientific data. We try to help our customers by allowing us to focus on the technology and allowing you to focus on the science. Next slide, please. And it's great to be able to introduce the following speakers today who are certainly experts in their respective fields, including what they're going to talk about today, which is STARLIMS. We have Carl. And Carl, yesterday you gave a great way of remembering your name. It was so great that I actually forgot. So if I butcher your name, I'm going to apologize in advance. It's Dorenbos or Dorenbis. Dorenbase. I was close. And then we have Gabriel Balint, both with BJ Soft as a partner of Astrix. So they bring, collectively, 50 total years of industry experience in things like pharmaceutical research, med device, life sciences, as well as laboratory informatics and software development. So there's a little bit more here about Carl and Gabriel. I'll let them talk for themselves, but it's a pleasure to have 2 gentlemen with us today who've got the breadth of experience that they do. We're thrilled to have them. And from here on out, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to enjoy the presentation myself and turn it over to you, Gabriel.
Yep. Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. As was mentioned, and you can see on the screen, both myself and Carl have been working for STARLIMS for several years. We actually worked together. We overlapped for about maybe 5 years or so. STARLIMS, where we worked on several releases, Carl being the QA, VP of QA, myself being a product manager. We worked on several releases of STARLIMS. That's how we knew each other, and that's how we ended up working together now. And we're really proud to be a partner of Astrix, and we've been working with Astrix for the last 5 years on different projects in the life science industry. Today's topics are going to be a little bit technical, but trying to keep them semi-technical to make sure fine for everybody. So the very first thing we're going to cover is the database performance, and I'm going to go over why this is important for STARLIMS and for STARLIMS clients. Then we're going to go and cover the customization of the user interface and all of the benefits and the disadvantages of the current interface. Then we're going to cover a little bit on the ELN development and the things that we can do together. The other topic we're going to have today is the automated file processing. In today's world, there is a lot of data that moves around, and the more automation, the better. The other aspect we're going to cover is the custom reporting optimization. Data is as good as the reports that you can have to look at the data. We're going to cover security as well through the multi-factor authentication. And obviously, another topic, important topic, is the data integrity and the enhancements for that. And finally, we're going to cover the cloud aspect and how STARLIMS can be migrated and be used in the cloud, and what are the advantages of doing so. So I'll start with the first topic, which is the database performance. So obviously everybody in today's world is dealing with a lot of data, and it is very important for the system to perform well, because that has a great impact on productivity, on getting the work done within the expected time frame. So a slow system impacts the turnaround time, and everybody is keen on having a great turnaround time for their clients as well. Together with Astrix, we can definitely work on optimizing the queries. It is very important to focus on the database optimization and look at the most to look at the most problematic queries in the system, and be able to identify them quickly and be able to fix them as quickly as possible to be able that the user experience and the performance of the system overall, it is within the expected parameters. This can be achieved by different ways. Obviously, one of the most popular one to address performance is creating the right database indexes and making sure the data is organized in such a way that works well with the indexes and works well with the use case of the each client, because not every client is having the same amount of data in the same data entity. So a lot of the times the indexes need to be adjusted so it keeps up with the growing data in the certain parts of the system. Obviously, in order to the sooner we identify the problems, the better would be for the user. They will not even know that there can be a problem. And this can be achieved by, excuse me, by doing proper testing where it matters, doing automated testing of the database to see where potential problems could come in the future. So it's not about waiting to see when the system gets slow. It's more about making sure that we prevent the system becoming slow by stress testing the system and making sure that we prevent those problems for the user. A lot of the suggestion solutions are also relating to the hardware that is being used. So it is the better CPU, more memory, and obviously this is an easy solution. It's just throwing money at hardware, and usually that can fix. But there is always a cost analysis between, do we really need to throw more hardware, or we can improve the application, and we can help to understand the best hardware that needs to be used, and if it really matters to add more server, if that really is the solution, add more memory, add more servers, or it's just a matter of tweaking the application, making sure the application works well, rather than trying to hide the problems by just adding more hardware. Sometimes adding more hardware is definitely the solution, could be the only solution, and maybe depending on the time sensitivity of problems, it might be the only solution. But as a long-term strategy, it needs to be evaluated against improving the application rather than just adding more and more hardware, because that becomes a black hole of expenses, which obviously is not a good thing. So we can identify where the problems are. Is it more memory that is being needed? Is it queries that need to be solved in order to consume less memory, or what is the long-term strategy and solution for specific performance issues? The other ways, options that we have in improving the database performance is looking at the disk and looking at the way the data is stored on the disk. There are different techniques that can be applied to make sure that the relevant data stays organized properly on the disk, and therefore the performance is relevant. That could be done to keep the most recent data closer and be used versus older data that is not really being used, only in very rare occasions. That can be on different partitions where they're not accessible, so therefore the data is being separated, and only fewer data is in the most is near to the user that needs to access that data. Another thing that can be evaluated in order to improve the database, besides fixing the application, adding more hardware in conjunction with the database, is also making sure that the database itself is at the optimal version, right? So SQL Server, Oracle servers, sometimes as you install the application, you tend to stay with the same SQL Server version, same Oracle versions. Usually it is a longer and more complex project to upgrade those databases. We can definitely help with that as well, making sure you're on the right version of the database, and that database, and you're taking advantage of all of the features that database version offers. Sometimes, especially for older systems that have been installed, being on older versions of database has a huge impact on performance, and that needs to be evaluated. Getting to the newer ones, both Microsoft and Oracle have been working hard in the last few years and added a lot of new features and improved their performance in such a way that makes a great impact on performance. And obviously the last topic that I have here that I think is one of the most important one is the database, the data archival. This is where you take all the data from your active, for your transactional tables, and you move it into archival tables. So STARLIMS has a built-in mechanism that works great, but it's designed generically to cover everybody and everything. What we can do, we can take a closer look at the archival needs of each system and determine what needs to be archived, when it needs to be archived, what are the best options there for archival. Most of the users don't need to have the data, all the data in the active tables all the time. They need to be accessible for legal, for compliance reasons, but they don't need it to be right there in those tables, and that has an impact on performance of the whole system, and can have also an impact on the cost of the servers that are needed in order to support the volume of data that runs through the system on a daily basis. This is one of the most important things that can be done in order to improve the database performance of a STARLIMS system. And again, STARLIMS has a great archival tool, but it has its own limitations, and it might not work in all cases. Plus, there are, depending on each user, depending on each client and each business needs, there might be things that are needed within the applications themselves to to be able to connect to the archival table. So there might be specific applications where you need to have access to both the current data and the archived data. So there might be needs for UI changes that would allow in certain application and to certain users to access the data depending on the business process. So we can help with those because we know where the archival tables are, and we can make that data available to the user without having to go through any technical complications to bring the data back to the active tables. Which leads me to the next topic, which is the customization of the user interface. This topic focuses on improving the user experience to small UI changes. There are a lot of functionality that STARLIMS offers throughout the system. It is great. It has a ton of features and it can solve a tremendous number of problems. But sometimes these features are developed for everybody. They have certain business processes in place, but they're not your business processes. And your business processes might be different than somebody else's business processes, but the features might be very, very much the same features when it comes to what the system needs to do, changing a status or adding data or whatever the case may be of the feature. Those would be the same. What we can help with is looking at your business process and look at the features that you need in the order that you need, and the only ones that you need, not every other feature that you might not use. So this would help us with decluttering the UI, making the most important features for the users available in the prime real estate of the screen, so they can focus on getting the things done rather than try to navigate through complex menus, finding the buttons in the wrong place, or even to the point where certain features can be combined. So in order to achieve the goal of the user might have to go and do 3 different things, click 3 different buttons, rather than having a combined button, which in the end achieves all of the 3 actions of the individual button. So it really depends on everybody's business process, and obviously STARLIMS can't incorporate each process, but they do incorporate a lot of the features that can cover most, if not all, of the processes. The other thing that can be done, and I covered a little bit on the previous slide, to make sure that the users that they only have the things that they need, and that starts from the first time they log into the application. It starts from the left menu, from the right menu. It starts from the dashboard that they see in front, and then it goes into all of the features that they have in each application. We can help with making sure that we understand each role, what they need, what are they focusing on, and adjusting the menus, the options available, even the layout to their specific needs. And that can save a lot of time. It can save, not just because the user now can see only the things that matter to them, but it can also improve the performance of the screens, because the less stuff you have on the screen, the less menu options you have on the screen, the less buttons you have, the less data you have, even improves the overall performance of the UI. So now you only get what you need. And this is also a compliance matter, because as of 21 CFR Part 11, you have to have access only to the things you need, right? So sometimes it's hard to clean up everything, and there is a lot of legacy that is being left just because it takes time to make sure the menus are the right menus and so on. So we can help with that and improve the overall user experience and UI performance for the end users. And this can be achieved by utilizing our subject matter experts, right? We understand, like Kevin mentioned in the beginning, we're scientists. Astrix has a lot of people that are scientists, and then they become technical people, so they do understand the business, they do understand the labs and what they need, so then they can translate better in to the development team what needs to be done, right? It's one thing for a developer to be told, and there is another thing for a user to actually be able to understand the lab process and trying to translate to the developers what it means and what needs to be done from that perspective. So this is a great advantage of Astrix, that not a lot needs to be explained, but there are a lot of subject matter experts in-house that can help with certain things that maybe not even the users are considering in having, but once they are being shown, then they see the value. So it's not just a matter of being forced to workforce to do certain things. We can propose and we can understand what the needs are to better translate them into these changes going into the UI and all of the different key STARLIMS applications. The next topic that I have is related to electronic lab notebooks development. So STARLIMS has the concept of ELNs, and it provides a really nice and robust tool to develop these ELNs and incorporate the ELNs into the business process. But developing these ELNs, it's time consuming and it needs to be understood properly. That starts from the requirements and goes to the actual development and what the development needs. And if you have worked with DLN, you know that the end product is great, and once you have it developed, can really help, but it takes a lot of steps to get it done, right? So this is where we can help, and not just by the development of the ELNs, the basic development of DLNs, but making sure the integration of DLNs with all of the external tools can be automated, meaning being able to pick data from Excel files, being able to pick data from external sources and load that data into the proper places on DLN, so the user doesn't have to copy and paste or type the data in or any other way, doing a lot of the automation from raw data into DLN, into the proper places of DLN. So definitely we can help with designing and building these templates that obviously can be reused on different workflows. We focus with our clients on reusability of the ELN. So if there are, let's say, 5-10 different ELNs that are needed, we look at common things across the ELNs and say, well, can we develop one that is more generic, that can be reused in a large proportion? So we start with that. We keep in mind that we need to do similar ELNs, but give us a template that can be used, and then we build the core of the 5 or 10 ELNs, and then we only focus at the end with the remaining 10% of each ELN. So that reduces the development time of overall. Not each ELN is specific, but when you have to do multiple ELNs, then we reduce the average time of the development for these ELNs to a really good number. I think some of the more complex ELNs are being estimated even by STARLIMS, I think, and into weeks of development. We can definitely take down the estimated numbers to a much lower turnaround time. We can also incorporate more graphical tools into ELN, not just sticking to basic Excel-like functionality, but including additional graphing capabilities, or even instrument integration into the ELNs, and being able to capture data automatically and place the data into the right spots on the ELN. And that can be done automatically, can be done manually on demand. Ideally, obviously, you would want to automate as much as possible and grabbing that information from different sources straight into the LN, and leveraging the STARLIMS SDMS grabber, or leveraging additional tools that can be used to make sure that data comes in and there is not a lot of user intervention, unless where it's really needed for the user to have their own input to the data. And this leads me to the next. This leads me to the next topic, which is automated file processing. In today's world, like I said, there is a lot of data that comes and goes from various sources and goes back into different sources as well. And LIMS in general is at the center of this data movement. So there is a lot of file processing that needs to happen in general, and it can be from instrument sending results for tests, but it can be also to process certain configuration, like new tests can be done through file configuration, or new client setup can be done through file configuration, where you can collect, or in the case of, let's say, clinical trials, there could be sites that can be loaded automatically through file processing. So it's not only about results, result files. It could be any data coming from external sources that can be loaded into STARLIMS using this automated file processing. STARLIMS offers the SDMS and the SDMS grabber, which is a tool that allows to monitor certain folders and be able to pull those files. It also allows you to define different parsing templates, and we can definitely and then provide parsing scripts, right? So if you work with the SDMS grabber, I'm sure you know what I mean, with all of the design that needs to happen and all of the parsing that needs to be done as well. So we can help with the SDMS grabber configuration. We can help with the parsing template configuration as well. We can also do one thing that is really important, I think, based on the volume of data in today's world, is to make sure the user know when certain things happen, right? That could be notifications via email, that could be notifications just on the dashboard in the menus. It's when certain data, critical data comes in, or when certain files are being processed and the configuration and the processing of the file is being complete. Let's say you work on a batch and you have a large batch with a lot of results, and you drop the file with the results. Now you have to know when those files are being processed. Just clicking and refreshing different screens is not really a good way. Notifications being sent to the user, hey, your file has been processed, or sending even a text message if needed. That would really help the user, so now they can focus on doing something else. But as soon as the data is available, the notification is being sent, so now they know they can go back and review the data and release the data out. I'm sorry, one thing that I need to mention is the grabber offers, the SDMS grabber offers great flexibility into defining, but what we've been working with clients is to make a determination if a grabber is really needed, or the data can be processed in a different way. The SDMS is a great tool, but also offers certain challenges. Restarts are needed, making sure the SDMS is running, and things like that. And it might not be applicable in every scenario. So we help clients make a determination: do you really need the SDMS grabber, or certain data can be loaded outside of the SDMS grabber? And we also help clients with migrating from processing through the grabber to just processing outside of it, and avoiding another point of failure that could happen within the process. So that is something to keep in mind. There are things that the grabber might not be able to be replaced, and that would be direct TCP/IP connections to the instruments, but that's that's a case-by-case scenario, and it needs to be evaluated if SDMS is the appropriate tool, or can be done, something else can be done outside of the SDMS grabber. Then the next topic that I have is the customization of the building custom reporting and optimizing these reports. Like I mentioned earlier, the data that you have is as good as the reports you can run to see the data. There is a lot of data in all of the systems out there, and sometimes it's hard to know what's there. So everybody needs good reports and very meaningful reports specific to their need. And STARLIMS offers a lot of out-of-the-box reports, but again, they could be generic and not very specific to each and everybody's needs, right? So even the out-of-the-box reports, they might need to be adjusted to be meaningful to everybody, to the specific process of the specific data that everybody has. This includes integrating these reports into the different screens, right? So if there are specific reports that you need, but in order to get them, you got to go out, you got to go to a different application, pull the report, put your parameters in, run the report. That might not be as useful. The report is great, but in order to get the report, you have to go to different screens and different places to get the report. So we can help is take those reports and put them in the business process within the screens that you need and have them available right there. You're in results, you're entering results, you want to see a specific report, you click and you have it, rather than go into a generic application and try to pull the report, right? And now these reports also need to perform, right? A lot of the times, what we've seen is the reports are great, but when clients have an increased volume in their data, these reports become bottleneck. What used to take 2 seconds now could take 2 minutes to get the report. And sometimes clients avoid these reports and they try to get the data outside of the reports, and just because it takes too long to get these reports out of STARLIMS. So we can help with optimizing these reports and making sure they run in the time that you need, right? Sometimes you might take, it's just reasonable to expect a more complex report to take 5, 10, 20 seconds, but when you go into minutes and so on for larger reports, then users have a problem and they can't wait for that, or you get into other issues where they time out and you have to try it 2, 3 different times until you get the report. So we can help definitely with the performance, and there are different techniques that can be used, right? One is just a very simple one to replace the crystal reports queries that they some of the structures just to be available there for certain reports that are more critical to the business and take longer time. So that data would be maybe populated on certain events. For example, when a batch is being released, we create certain data points that then those data points will be used in reports. Or other events when samples are being registered, or when samples are being disposed, we can create certain data structures that those can be used in the reports, and we modify the reports to look at that data structure, and we make sure that those reports are performant. Excuse me. The next topic that I have is the multi-factor authentication. This is, I think, it's a very important topic because it ties to the security. And as I'm sure you know, you've seen a lot of attacks, a lot of attempts to steal data, and a lot of, unfortunately, successful attempts to steal data. This mitigates that risk because a lot of the security breaches are more internal rather than through very sophisticated attacks. You have users using non-secure passwords, or saving those passwords and sending them via email or any other method where these passwords, they get out, they're not as secure. The multi-factor authentication helps mitigate that risk. So we don't recommend less secure passwords, but even with a known or less secure password, it's really hard for somebody to log into an account as long as you have two-factor authentication, meaning you have something on you that validates that it's you. We can send a text message, you can send an email, you can use third-party applications such as Google Authenticator, where random codes are being generated every minute. You can use some of the physical tokens such as YubiKeys to make sure that the user has something physical on them, and you can validate that it's them through that. And this is more appropriate for external facing applications, right? If you have a client facing portal, or you have a patient portal, this is more critical in those situations where the system is open up to the public, and anybody from anywhere can connect into the system. Obviously, you have to make a balance between too tight of a security, which security officers will say that there isn't such thing as a too tight security, and usability of the system. And there are different techniques in order to achieve that we can later discuss about. The database integrity enhancement, it is the next topic that I have, and this is a regulatory matter of making sure that the accuracy of data and data consistency, it is met through the entire life cycle of the data. So you make sure that the data is being recorded as intended, and you have a way to go back and see. Audit trail definitely has a comprehensive audit trail, but in order to see the audit trail, there is a lot of configuration that you have to do. And also, audit trail in the end, after years of using STARLIMS, becomes to the point where it's 80–90% of the database data, right? It just becomes really big. So there are different ways, including archival of the audit trail, to make sure that you still have the audit trail, but it doesn't become a bottleneck when it comes to your performance and user experience. The next topic I have is the integrated cloud services hosted on AWS. This is obviously an important topic for every IT organization. STARLIMS works in the cloud. It was validated by STARLIMS that works in the cloud, and it can be used in AWS. We've helped clients migrate from their local data servers to AWS, SQL Server, database servers, application servers, all in AWS, and obviously there are no issues there. There are many advantages, but the two one is the availability and the scalability. The redundancy of AWS and the different zones, different data centers that they have, offer you the availability that you need. making sure the database doesn't go down, application servers don't go down. And then the scalability, within clicks, you can get what we discussed earlier, more hardware, more horsepower for the database, for the application server, to make sure that the workload is being supported by the system that you have. So there are definitely major advantages of using STARLIMS in AWS. I think that was the last topic that I had. And I think this is the next webinar. So
yeah, Gabriel, it's Kevin.
Yep.
Yeah, you could build that slide out if you want. So, well, first of all, I want to thank you for a great presentation. Certainly a lot of valuable stuff. You could build the whole slide out. It's fine. Before we get into discussing what's going to be coming next month, I want to give everybody the opportunity to have their questions answered. There were quite a few that came throughout the session. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and pause the recording.